Guys, it's Mike, the Baldadonis. And as you know, some of the things I talk about on my videos, on my channel is health, conspiracy theories. What else do I talk about? I talk about life experiences. And this gentleman right here, his name is John, and he has a ton of life experiences. And over the past few years, I've gathered a lot of information from him. And there's something that we were talking about. The video. The thing that we want to talk about today is, we were talking yesterday about 9/11, and we have the conspiracy theorists out there, and we're going to go to another perspective of what people may think. So this is my friend John. John, let's talk about some of your story.
Well, to start off with, I don't think what I have to say is a conspiracy.
No, but what'd you do for work when this all happened?
I am an air traffic controller, a retired air traffic controller, and I worked in a radar facility called Boston Center, which was in Nashville, New Hampshire, which controlled all the traffic over 6 New England states, part of New York State, most New York State, down over to New York City. And I was working that day on 9/11, and I was very much involved into what happened that day. And my theory on this particular video is, I feel that there were four airplanes that were hijacked that took off from airports on the East Coast, Boston, Newark, and Philadelphia. And the two that took off from Boston crashed into the World Trade Center. The one that took off from Newark crashed in the fields in Pennsylvania, and the other one took off and crashed into the Pentagon. And it was all done on the East Coast and East Coast time. And my particular theory was, and what I feel happened that day, that there were more hijackers out there, probably throughout the country. I feel, and that's basically how our security was back then. At that time, we didn't have what we have now in TSA, and that's so Height Security, which was a new organization, a new part of the government that was formed after 9/11, because of 9/11 actually, and to protect our airports. And at that time on 9/11, you could actually walk right up to the gate, go through a little metal detector, and walk to the gates. So these hijackers, they walked in with box cutters, and they were able to get them through the security, and that's what they used for weapons. And they waited the airplanes take off. They attack the crew, kill the crew, and take over the airplane. And the airplanes are big, heavy jets that are loaded with high-octane fuel, full of high-octane fuels, because all these aircraft were on the East Coast. They were headed for West Coast, loaded with fuel. So they were basically missiles. That's what they used. But my theory is on that. And then when everything happened, we shut it all down. And by 9 o'clock in the morning, the National Command said, no more airplanes will take off and force all the aircraft in the air to land. So that being said, it was on an East Coast time of 9 o'clock. Well, these guys, you had no idea, because they were all, they're already in Boston and Newark and Philadelphia. I feel that there were possibly more, because in the West Coast at the time, it's 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. Their planes are not ready to go yet. If you had the red eyes that would come from the West Coast to the East Coast, they had already gotten into the East, they had already landed in the East Coast. So it's just one of my theories that there probably were more hijackers out there. But it's useless for them, because if you shut down the system, then the airplane's not going to get in the air. So they're not going to be able to do anything. So I feel that there were other cells, terrorists, maybe already in other aircrafts in the West Coast, maybe in the central part of the country, that unless they get in the air, they can't do anything. And when we shut the whole system down nationwide, that's what air traffic control is. We control all the airports, we control the airspace and everything. So once we shut it down, these airplanes that could have been taxiing out, they were sent back to the gates, and everything was shut down. So they couldn't do anything.
Now,
And you probably never heard of these people.
Now, you brought up something to me yesterday about people coming from different countries.
Well, yes. Well, when the airspace was shut down, the national airspace, that meant we weren't letting anybody in from outside the country. And for instance, aircraft that were coming in from Europe being ahead of us in times, 5, 6, 7, whatever they come from in Europe in time zone, they're already in the air. And they're crossing the ocean. So when we shut the airspace down, they either had to make a determination whether they had enough fuel to turn around and get back to where they came from, or they had to land mainly in Canada. Throughout Canada, a number of these airplanes landed because they were not going to be allowed to come into the airspace in the United States. And there was a lot of stories about some of the things that happened because they landed. There was one big area, it's called Gander, up in Newfoundland. And an unbelievable big heavy jets from Europe landed there, and all of a sudden there were thousands and thousands of people in Gander.
Right.
Where
right.
they had
Unexpectedly. No hotel service.
There's 500 hotel rooms in all of Gander, and there's great stories on there about how the Canadians and the people of Gander took these passengers in, and they had to spend a number of days with them because there was no way.
Right. So we're in national security lockdown, basically.
Right.
And they were stuck in this place for several days.
Yes, for several days. Because the airspace in the United States was shut down for at least 5 days. So, and the only way to get was to drive. But anyways, that's my theory on, I feel that there possibly could have been more cells out there, more terrorists out there that were looking to do more damage in our country.
Now, you being a controller, right?
Right.
Did you actually talk to him?
Yes, I actually.
Did you talk to him?
And the United 170, the two aircraft that crashed into the World Trade Center, the American flew through my airspace, the first one, American 11, that was hijacked. He was already hijacked when he came through my airspace, and I was actually controlling the second aircraft, United 175, who at the time I was working him, he wasn't hijacked. It was within 10, 15 minutes after let's say maybe even less than that, after I turned him over to the next controller that he was hijacked.
Wow, so you actually was involved.
I was
you were
deep
hands-on.
involved in the events 9/11 as a controller.
So you did a video, not a video, but you did an interview with.
We did. There's a bunch of us controllers that did an interview the next year with Tom Brokaw, and basically it was based on what happened, but it was also about how, which I felt as an air traffic controller, and I'm very proud to do it as an air traffic controller, how quickly aircraft, when the word come down, nobody's taking off, everybody has to land. Aircraft will land in. For instance, if somebody took off a Hartford that was going to Tampa, Florida, was landing in Baltimore. How quickly the airplanes will land. And if you look on there's videos out there on YouTube of what's happening on a daily basis in the national airspace, where you can actually look at a live map of what's happening, where all the air traffic is in the United States at any one time. It is available. And when you look at the events of 9/11, and you go to a certain time when the first one hit and the second one hit, and then how many airplanes in the sky, and how quickly the airplane, how the skies got cleared, and nobody was allowed to take off.
What was the name of that YouTube? It's on YouTube, right? That series.
Well, there was one.
So what was the name?
It's not YouTube, but it was a
documentary, right?
A documentary that I did on. It's called UAL 175 as the world watched.
Okay.
And Yeah.
So that's a documentary that I'll
It was done on the Learning Channel, but it was done in 2004.
Okay, so I'm going to put that in the link in the description about his video, so you can watch. It's about an hour video.
It's about an hour video. It was an hour program, an hour
Okay.
documentary that was done with myself, other controllers, families, pilots. Yeah.
Right.
So that's my theory.
All right. So today he's gonna be integrated into my channel.
Baldadonis.
Baldadonis. That's right. But he's got a lot of interesting stories, and I love picking his brain. And we're just gonna have some fun with John with more videos. But on that note, Baldadonis out.